Good morning, afternoon, evening, whatever it is, wherever you are. Good to have you here. So we've spent the past 12 minutes fighting with Teams. So Martin's microphone isn't available, and Christos's screen share isn't available. So,
Yeah.
what kind
Without further ado.
so what kind of news? What kind of news do you have for us today, Christos? Was there anything in particular that jumped out at you?
Well, I did have a couple of news. One of them was actually somebody that managed to get MSAL.js 2.0 working with B2C, which technically was not supported because of course issues and whatever. But he managed to get it to work, so that seems to be working now. But I haven't really confirmed that, so we need to test it. The other one is that as we're doing our stream on Tuesday, we found out that conditional access is now available in B2C, which is great news. And you also have risky users and risky behavior. So if you are a B2C user, that's exciting news. Other than that, we don't have any major announcements. We have Ignite coming in a couple of weeks, so I hope everyone is excited and ready for that. We'll probably do something around that, right? We discussed about maybe a live stream or a code party or whatever. So stand by as we are trying to get organized. Last minute as always.
That might be kind of fun to do. Like we can just we should just sit around and opine and do a live, like a shared stream. We'll just stream. We'll find a cool identity-related Ignite session, and we'll stream it and add commentary. Because of course, that's what people want is the commentary of two other people compared to the person who's actually standing up there presenting. I guess nobody's standing and presenting. Although, didn't you see that guy on Twitter this week? I don't know if you saw it. This dude on Twitter was like, if you're presenting, you need to stand up and like wear a suit or something. Did you see this guy? Because he got absolutely torn up.
Oh, yeah. I can imagine. Oh, no, my screen got fuzzy again. Remember yesterday when I got all blurry?
That's okay.
Again? Blurry. Yeah, man. I mean, we should be standing up and putting a suit on. Right? You got a shirt already, so you're light years ahead of me. But,
well, I have to wear... I wear shirts like this out of necessity, because it's what my closet's full of, and I don't want to go buy new clothes, because why would I buy new clothes right now? The only reason I'd have to buy new clothes is because I don't fit in the ones I've got, so I just buy big shirts, It gives me a little...
flexible. That's flexible. Or elastic, like you can get some Lycra or whatever.
Yeah, I think the last thing anyone would want to see is me in an elastic shirt, but, whatever, to each their own. So,
hey, you never know. We might hit a niche there, right? Now, let's go back into presenter kind of a mode. Yeah, do whatever you're comfortable with. Wear whatever you're comfortable with. Your audience will come for you, or I don't think they're coming for our clothes. Although people used to say dress for success. Well, I don't know if that works on live streams, right?
Well, that's I was down at the beach. I was down at the beach a few weeks ago, and I remember my sister, she was like, why don't you go lay out on the beach with us? And I was like, well, A, it's hot, so no. But secondly, like Greenpeace is going to come out and start trying to roll me back in the ocean, I was like, I don't want to do this. But anyway, so cool. All right. So we've got a great guest for us today. He's going to do some super, super cool stuff from JetBrains. And we got this thing today. This Surface Duo came today. The box that came in, it shipped in, had no packaging or like padding, and
just like that, right? And a label on the top.
So it's kind of rattling a little bit. So I don't know if I'm going to end up with a handful of glass shards or not, but I guess we'll find out. So anyway, today we have Maarten from JetBrains, who's gonna do some super cool stuff with Rider.
Hey, Maarten. Nice for you to join us. Thanks so much for coming, and it's great to have you.
Happy to do that. And you were just talking about wearing a dress shirt to present. Well, at least I'm standing, but I have to say I feel kind of naked with my microphone not working and just talking into the void now to my microphone. So that's awkward. Anyway, thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to have you. So what are we gonna do today?
So I was thinking of showing a couple of things that we've added in the latest Rider release in terms of how to work with Azure Identity and doing things around that. Quickly walk through that. Maybe dive a little bit into the code base of the Azure plugin for Rider, which is open source, by the way, and then maybe build a small additional feature. I would not want to venture into building a UI for it, but just go through the flow of how you can do something. But I think that will become clear. We're just going to call the Graph API and add some role-based access control stuff.
Very nice.
Nice. And maybe you want to do a quick introduction about what Rider is, because some of our audience may not have come across this one before.
Yeah, good idea. Well, Rider is essentially the JetBrains IDE that is ReSharper, which is a plugin for Visual Studio. But Rider is a standalone IDE that is powered by ReSharper, but is essentially our own IDE based on the IntelliJ platform that also powers WebStorm, IntelliJ, PyCharm, all of the other IDEs that we have at JetBrains. Which is kind of interesting because you have all of the features from IntelliJ, but there's also all of the features from ReSharper in there. It's also kind of interesting in terms of building software or building plugins for Rider, because IntelliJ is JVM based, so that's all Java and Kotlin, whereas ReSharper is .NET based, and we kind of try to mix both into one product in Rider. But that makes building plugins slightly more complex because very often you have to fiddle around in both sides of the equation there.
Mm-hmm. Nice. And what can you build with Rider today? Like if I were to install it, what kind of applications can I build?
I would say anything. So whether you are building ASP.NET, WinForms, WPF, depending on the operating system that you use, you will be able to use all of those things. So WinForms, of course, is not going to work on a Mac or on Linux, but if you're on Windows, you can do WinForms. Even there's a designer where you can drag and drop your labels and buttons and whatnot, so you can build those things. Works for .NET Framework, works for .NET Core, and works for Mono as well, so you can use whatever you want to use there.
Can we try to get WinForms working on a Mac today?
And it runs on Windows, Mac, and Linux, right? Like, come as you are, whatever you've got, you can run Rider.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. And it's also the exact same IDE across all of those platforms. So if you switch back and forth between Windows and Mac, for example, it's the same environment. The look and feel is the same. The shortcuts may be different because you have a different keyboard, but other than that, it's the same IDE.
Super cool.
Nice.
All right.
So the old adage of having Java and JVM write once, run anywhere, it's kind of true.
So how much of Rider is sort of the base IDE Java, like still Java based, and then the .NET components are sort of like added on top, or like does it run? Is it a .NET application, or is it a Java app, or something completely different?
It's a little bit of both. So essentially what happens is if you start Rider, this is Rider, and that is all Java that you see. So this entire window, everything you see there is essentially Java. The moment you start opening a project, the moment you create a project, whatever you do, the moment you start opening a solution, then ReSharper will kick in and do all of the analysis for everything that is .NET based. But in the editor, the codes that you're writing is essentially happening on the Java side. We pipe all that to the ReSharper side, and then ReSharper runs analyzers, codes completion, quick fixes, refactoring, and all that, and then pipes it back into the front ends.
Wow, that's pretty serious. That's pretty intense. Like, it's just so cool to think of the work that went into making that work.
It's even worse. I like to think of Rider as something that is a microservices architecture, because we have IntelliJ as the IDE, and we have Rider as a microservice where we communicate for everything that is related to .NET in general. But when you use WinForms, when you use WPF, we will spin up yet another process that will pipe the UI into Rider as well. So then all of a sudden it's three processes working together. If you have Roslyn quick fixes in your project, we also fire up a Roslyn process that will also run analyzers and do quick fixes and stuff like that. And that also contributes. So it's almost a microservice based IDE, I would say.
Nice. That's super cool.
Yes. I never realized that there was so much architecture behind the ID. That's crazy.
Yeah, I come from a cloud background, and IDEs is kind of interesting, especially in this way, because there's lots of similar concepts. There's queues involved between different components, and making sure that you have guaranteed delivery, but also one-time processing and stuff like that.
Yeah, nice.
Actually, if you're interested in some of the architecture that goes on, it's a little bit simplified. But Code Magazine wrote an article that details some of the protocol and why we built it the way we did it. Because of course, there's 20 years of IntelliJ in there. There's 18 years of resharpening there. So you don't just start rewriting a new IDE. You look at what you have and then you start combining the things together. This was our first WinForms-based IDE, by the way. So it's a nice article with lots of history and technical.
Brings so many memories. Just looking at that picture over there, man, the memories.
Actually, pretty impressed that at that time we managed to render custom controls in WinForms with all of those comments and all of that stuff in there.
Yeah. Oh, man, there were so many limitations back then. I think developers these days have it so easy that don't realize it. That software has moved on so much. And being in the industry, like I've been writing software since 2000, so I'm fairly noob in the space. But you know, somebody that enters into the developer space today, they have so many tools. They have so much flexibility. Like even as a .NET developer, like 10 years ago or 7 years ago, you only had one option. That was Windows and Visual Studio, and there was no way around it. Today, you can choose your operating system, you can choose your developer tools, and there's so many amazing tools out there that you're not restricted to just one platform or one tool set. You mix and match and do whatever you like, and it's amazing. It just, you know, younglings these days do not realize the pain that we went through and we experienced the lock-in to the operating systems. And so it's sometimes funny when people say, oh, these things just locks you into the platform. Like, dude, come on. You know, even with Azure, you got like Terraform, you got ARM, you got PowerShell, you got CLIs, everything, right? You go back 7 years ago, 5 years ago, you didn't have all these things. So open source and the propagation of this kind of an open community and open tooling has been fantastic for the ecosystem. So
hey, so Maarten, your bio is, well, I didn't know you went to Michigan State and were actually named Chris Woodruff, because that's what it says.
Well, that's they flipped that.
Code with Sean just brought it up. He's like, pretty sure that's not the right pretty sure that's not the right bio for Maarten.
I'll move to a separate.
We won't be distracted. Cool. No, this is super cool. I'll put a link to this article in the chat, so if anybody's interested, we'll take a look at it.
All right.
So cool.
So yeah, the main thing I wanted to show today was some of the things that are in the Azure Toolkit for Rider. So you have Rider, and there's lots of things in there out of the box, but there's also a rich plugin ecosystem. So if you have Rider open, you can go to the plugins and then start searching on the marketplace for a lot of things. Like for example, the heap allocations viewer is kind of nice. It will tell you when you're doing memory allocations and stuff like that, and give you hints on how to improve on that. There's Xamarin support and so on. And for Azure, we essentially ship something similar, which is the Azure Toolkit for Rider as a plugin. If you want some details on that one, it's on our marketplace website. You can actually go to the versions and reviews. And this is me logged in basically, but you'll see some screenshots and some description, and you can get that installed. If you're interested in the source code, that is actually on GitHub. So the entire plugin is open source. And I'll give credit where credit is due. We actually are extending the Microsoft's Azure plugin for IntelliJ. This is one of those nice things where, since Rider is IntelliJ based, Microsoft has been building Azure tooling for IntelliJ, more focused on Java, more focused on HD Insights and all the work that those folks typically have. But we essentially forked that one. We did some refactoring so that we can still have the IntelliJ plugin, but also a Rider one. And yeah, we're essentially building on top of that thing.
Very nice. In fact, I synced with the PMs that are managing that toolkit yesterday, and they had some really interesting feedback about the stuff that you guys have been doing. So there's a lot of exciting stuff coming up on our end as well.
That is good. Looking forward, because we also merged the Microsoft branch back into our branch for the Azure plugin in Rider. So whenever something is updated there in terms of authentication, for example, we get that source code as well.
Right, nice.
And we try, of course, to do the inverse as well, where if we see something that matters, we log an issue or do a pull request or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Cool, but I'll leave that for a later point in time. Let's first look at the shiny front end and using the actual plugin.
So the shiny front end, I love it.
And what is?
So what I want to.
Sorry, I don't mean to keep interrupting you, but so what is the Azure plugin? What is the Azure Tools or Azure Toolkit like? What does it give us? Just like interaction with Azure resources, like deploying to Azure. Like what kind of stuff what kind of features do we get with that plugin?
It's almost an endless list of features. So,
endless. I love it.
one of the things you'll get is a Azure Resource Explorer, where you see storage accounts, function apps, web apps, and all of those things. If you have web and function apps, you can restart from there. You can deploy to your function app as well. If you want to stream logs into the IDE and have a tool window with scrolling logs, you will see that as well. There's some basic database management as well, so you will see your databases in there in the Azure Explorer. We added some functionality where you can essentially right-click or use the context menu on that database node in the Explorer, and then immediately connect to it using the database tooling that is in Rider. So essentially bridging existing features and 1 + 1 = 3 in that case. We'll also detect if you do not have your current IP address in the Azure firewall for SQL. So we'll update that as well.
Nice.
Yeah, it's essentially trying to make life as an Azure developer better. In terms of functions, we've done a lot of things. We integrated the Azure AD storage emulator. So if you're working cross-platform, you can run a blob or a queue emulator inside of Rider as well. If you're building functions, there's the ability to trigger single functions instead of having to run every single function that you have in your application. You can just run one specific one. We have code completion for timer triggers. It's endless. Did I mention Cloud Shell? I didn't mention Cloud Shell.
No, wow.
Oh, dude, you got Cloud Shell in there as well?
Yep.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, nice.
So I mean, I could build apps for Azure and not have to go to the portal at all, is what I'm hearing.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Unless, of course, when you start doing Azure DevOps and do proper CI pipelines and stuff like that, then of course Rider it's your development environment. But if you want to fiddle around, deploy something, you can definitely.
Yeah. For my inner loop of development, I guess is that I can do a whole lot of work and get it out in Azure without having to jump to the portal. That's awesome.
Yep. So yeah, I'll show a couple of things from that Azure Explorer as well. And once we dive into the source code for the plugin, I'll maybe show some of the Cloud Shell stuff as well, because there's not really anything around that in the Azure APIs that are to be found. Mm-hmm. But there's some cool extension points that you can use to essentially hook on top of that Java SDK there and build your own API calls.
Nice. Did you know that Cloud Shell now comes into in a container, Maarten?
Yep. I'm waiting for the API specs there to also integrate that.
Right. And I put a link to the Azure AD in case people are not aware of what Azure AD is. Somebody's saying they're doing quite of Pulumi with Azure. Do you guys support Pulumi inside Rider? Like, do you have an extension for Pulumi Intelligence and what have you?
We don't currently, I think. I should check. I've heard some rumors that someone is working on that, but I have no idea. So we'll have to check.
Okay. There you go. Feature request live on stream.
All right. So what I want to do is do one of the things that so folks watching, Christos and I have been chatting about something which is essentially registering your web application with Azure AD the moment you start a new ASP.NET application that is using organizational authentication. So that's one of the things that I want to quickly show you how that could work and how you could use that in your application. So let's start off with a new solution, and let's go with an ASP.NET Core web application. Just go with web app MVC, doesn't really matter. Let's go with web app. I will call this very inspirational web application 567. The higher the number, the cooler you are, because you have to work on applications on your desktop or your temp folder. And I'll go with organizational authentication for a single tenant. So the typical flow that you get when you use the .NET New templates, for example, for ASP.NET Core. Actually, this is the .NET New template that is being used under the hood. So let's create that. And once we have that, we can start building an application. So I thought of this massive, gigantic sample that we could build in the live stream, and that would be something that uploads a file to blob storage.
Web application 567. That's that's nice.
You'll see IPO in 2 or 3 years, I think. All right. So if you use the .NET New template, which again Rider is using under the hood, what you typically get is an app settings JSON with this Azure AD configuration that is essentially what the template has.
Right.
So what the plugin does, if you have the Azure plugin installed, is it will, once packages are restored, and that's taking quite a while. It's fine. Okay, good.
Live stream.
Once that's done, we will recognize that the application is not yet registered in Azure Active Directory, because this, of course, is just bogus. We'll also see if the tenant ID is something that looks suspicious. So if you have this tenant ID, this plugin may not always work for you, but unless you have a different tenant ID, you'll probably be fine.
Okay.
So what we can do with this one is essentially register application. This will open a dialog where you can set the callback URL to your application, pick the domain from your Active Directory that you're signed into. If you already have a client ID, you can enter it there as well, and then register, and this will register the application with Azure AD. Now, I'm not going to click there yet, because there's something else that I first want to show, and that is how you, in Rider, authenticate with that Azure Active Directory, how it knows that this is occurring and that it can do this. So I mentioned the Azure Explorer, and there you'll, again, once you're logged in, you'll see function apps, web apps, and all that. Storage accounts will be in there as well. The first time you try the plugin, you will not be logged in. So sign out and sign in again. And the moment you sign in, there's a couple of options that you can use. You can use the device login, where you can essentially authenticate using the browser, enter credentials, do all of that, and then you get back a token, and then Rider knows what to do with it. In the latest version, we also added Azure CLI authentication, which is probably more interesting, because a lot of tooling nowadays is making use of AZ, the command line tools, to do authentication. So if you log in using Azure CLI, Rider will use the same credentials that your application may be using on your dev machine to access, for example, a storage account.
Nice. Are you guys using the Azure identity behind the scenes for this to authenticate, or do you have your own? You're all down your own authentication tooling.
It's a little bit of everything. So I can actually.
I like it.
Probably open. So this is, by the way, IntelliJ. You may notice that it looks very similar to Rider.
Yeah.
But in IntelliJ, we are making use of the Azure tools. Or sorry, we are building the Azure tools that we use for the plugin. And we are using, there's some ADAL in there, there's some of the Microsoft provided authentication libraries that we use. So based on the option that you choose, the authentication mechanism will be different. For Azure CLI, I think there's an Azure CLI, Azure Manager. And this thing essentially, where is it?
Yeah, because the Azure CLI, there's a specific command on CLI to get an access token, right, for a specific resource like Azure or the graph or whatever. In fact, we use that in something we've been working on. We've been using essentially a CLI manager that goes and calls CLI for us. So if you're already signed in to CLI, you can just pick up a token that way.
Yeah, essentially under the hood, we are using some of the Microsoft libraries to do this, and I've been spelunking through it a little bit, and I think it essentially looks up the token that is stored on disk that AZ CLI uses.
Right.
Cool.
And then whenever there's a refresh token needed and stuff like that, the library does that for you. So it's going to be either AZ or this library that will do the refreshing of tokens when needed, which is kind of cool.
Nice. Thank you for indulging us into digging behind the scenes.
Right. So right now, if I log in Rider using Azure CLI, not a lot will happen. Essentially, what will happen is think it's account, right? Easy account.
Easy login. Oh yeah.
Once I logged in using
list
or whatever. So once you log in using the command line tools for Rider, it's essentially going to be pick the Azure CLI option, sign in.
Right.
It will enumerate the subscriptions that you have, and you can essentially select the ones that you want to manage from inside of Rider.
See, JP, no more problems with multiple tenants and being member of some weird stuff.
Well,
one of the other interesting things of reusing the authentication libraries that Microsoft provides is also that we can make use of China Cloud, for example, or German clouds, and all of the other Azure environments there without really having to switch things around. So if you sign in using the command line tools to your China Cloud, you can use that in Rider as well.
Nice.
All right, so I will now register my application, which is essentially going to use the same credentials that I used to sign into Rider. Register, and what this will do is, first of all, update my app settings. And the other thing that it will do is in my AD, under the application registrations, I should now be able to see my new application, web application 567. So that was an easy one, and if I now want to make use of identity or OpenID Connect to log into my application, this will all work out of the box by registering that application. So if you were to run this one, you would see a login prompt using Azure AD. Let's try it out. Come on, there we go. So you'll see I will have to log in using this new application. I'll use this identity, go in there, and now I have something wrong. Huh.
Uh-oh.
Access denied.
Misconfigured. Oh, no permissions. That's okay. We see that a lot. So do you have, let's go look at your, do you have, any scopes under API permissions added in there? That may be what's missing.
I don't think I have, no.
Yeah, that's what's missing. And because so by default, usually there's one which is user.read under graph. And user.read is sort of like a helper because it also kind of includes by default things like OpenID and profile. So and it may just be that the tooling, when it adds that, just needs to make sure that permission's also added, because that should be well known. Like the graph app ID should be well known. The permission ID may be different per tenant. We'll have to look and see, but yeah.
There's another potential option that I have here, and that is that I still have a token from a previous run of this thing. So what I'm going to do is look at my cookies and remove all of the cookies as well. Just to be on the safe side. All right, there we go. I'll use different account maybe, go in, and nope, still the case. All right, so in here I should add a new API permission, I guess, or...
Yeah, delegated permission. And so this is just a way to say, and you can just search for user.read, because user.read essentially will cover a lot of those for you. A delegated one essentially is one that we're asking the user for, and because it's signing in the user in, of course we have to ask the user if we want to let them sign in. And this you don't need to do an admin consent on, because the user's going to consent the first time anyway. So the first time the user tries to sign in, they're going to say, oh, well, you're trying to sign in, and would you like to let this application sign you in?
All right, let's give it another go then. There we go. There we are. That seems better.
Yeah, feels a lot better.
Working with identity guys live on stream sometimes helps.
it helps that you have folks from the identity team on your live stream. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So there we are. We now logged in thanks to that app registration that we did in Rider. Now, one of the things that I want to do is quickly also use the identity of this application to be able to write something to a blob storage account, for example.
Nice.
So what I'm first going to do is create a storage account from here. Let's give it the wonderful name, web app 567. I'll prefix a name just to be sure that this is probably not taken. I'll make it a blob storage account. Yeah, let's go with that. Standard is fine. Locally redundant, hot. Not in Australia. I'll stay in Europe somewhere.
Well, I like how you have them in alphabetic order, unlike on our on our portal sometimes where you try to find them and they're all over the place. I don't know why I would do that, but hey.
Yeah, but on the portal, the nice thing is that you can typically also start typing.
Yeah. That's the one saving grace, is you can start typing.
So, yeah, let's go in North Europe, create a new resource group with a very descriptive name, remove me later.
You know, I'd like to get the Azure team to run some sort of a query on every resource group in existence across the whole platform for variations of delete me, remove me, not needed, get rid of me, because I know I've probably got 24 resource groups that are some variation of delete me, and which in itself is a problem, because if you have more than one delete me resource group, then clearly you're not following up at the end to actually delete it.
Yeah. I think we got another permission error here, right?
No, that was the one that we had previously. So that's essentially the output that we had in the error page before.
Right.
So now we have a storage account. I can go in there and create a blob container. Let's call that uploads, because I want to upload some files in there.
Very nice.
And then I can look at what is in there, because
nice.
We didn't really upload anything yet. We cannot see.
So is that the integration with Azurite? You're actually bringing Azurite into the ID? Is that how it works?
No, that's another one. So under services in Rider, if you have Docker running, you will see your Docker containers there, and Azurite is there as well.
Right.
You can specify some configuration if you want for Azurite as well, namely where's Node located, where's the Azurite package located, etc. And then if you want to use HTTPS, for example, you can specify certificate paths and all that. One that I find very interesting is that you can also specify the Azurite workspace. So by default, it will be managed by Rider, which means that all of your storage is just going in one folder that Rider knows about.
Okay.
But what you can also do is store data in the current solution folder. And that's really nice if you are using multiple solutions and doing multiple tasks throughout the day. Where essentially, depending on the solution that you load in Rider, you will see the storage containers and queues and whatnot that you have.
Yeah, that is super cool. Like that alone, that alone is enough for me to want to use this like immediately. That's awesome.
So much functionality, I love it. So are you then using Storage Explorer to see the data, or do you guys roll out your?
You can do it from within Rider. So if I start Azurite, you will see the path to where it's storing its files. You'll see that it now started, and now I can connect to the storage emulator, create a blob container there. I'll give it your name, Christos.
Oh my God, I am so excited.
You are now famous on my machine, and then you can upload files into that storage account.
I am honored.
A Chrome DLL,
nice.
That looks fine. Upload that.
Yeah.
And you'll see Azurite is logging all of the requests that are coming into the storage emulator, and in the storage account you will see that we now uploaded that DLL.
Very nice.
Oh, this is so cool. I love this. Sorry, I'm just like I it's so easy. Like it just I don't know. It's so easy to use. I love it.
So excited.
All right. Yeah, let's maybe go with the following thing and extend our application to also be able to upload that DLL through a nice web page to that public storage account. So what I'm going to do is go into my index.cs HTML. It's a Razor page. And actually, before I do that, I will add some NuGet packages to work with storage in this project. So I will need Azure Storage blobs, I think. Yeah, there we go. By the way, you can use your mouse a lot in Rider, but you can also Alt-Enter on a lot of things and just install from here. Find the next package, Alt-Enter, and just batch install multiple packages if you want. We'll need that one, and we'll also need identity, I think.
So good. It's just all these. It's all of these small sort of. I don't know. You can tell that the people who built it.
Remove all of paper.
Yeah, like the people who built this clearly work in Visual Studio or in VS Code on a regular basis, because these are all like things that would make my day-to-day just that a little bit much better, right? Like, and then on the whole, they're just. In fact, I'm literally installing Rider right now.
That's good. Yes, I'm having impact here. Perfect. Yeah, I think it's one of the things when we are at conferences, for example, and people walk up to you like, can you give me a 1-minute pitch on what Rider is? And that's a really hard question because we don't have this one massive unique selling proposition. Yeah. It's those 10,000 of really small ones that add up over time and once you start using the product.
Yeah. If you spend your whole day inside an ID, you want it to be easy and to do what it's supposed to do. And when it doesn't do it, then it's frustrating. There are workarounds, but if you lose time trying to be productive, then yeah, it's the paper cuts that actually make the difference.
Yep.
All right, so Razor Pages. One of the things that I'll need here if I want to upload a file is a property on my current page model, which will accept the upload. So what I'm going to do is add a new property, which is going to be an iForm file, I think. Yeah, there we go, and let's call that one uploads. Perfect. Go back and include that. And this is going to be a bind property, so that when we post something to this page, this form field will be filled up. I'm also going to show you my perfect design skills in HTML. So what I'm going to do is remove all of this, because I think I can do something that is nicer. Well, I'm actually going to keep text centered, because that's probably nice as well. So what I'm going to do is remove this, add a form there, give it a method post. That's going to be, because I'm doing an upload, I'll need the multi-part form data one. Then go in there. I'll add an input type upload. File, I think, right? File. And then that's going to be an ASP4 because we want to bind this one to the upload property that we had in our page. So let's do that. And the other thing that we'll need is probably an input type submit. Actually, submit this one as well. So I think this is going to look very, very nice in the browser.
Oh, Maarten, one quick question for you.
Yeah.
Is there any, and this came from Sean in the chat, is there any support for ARM template authoring in Rider, like any sort of plugins or tools to make building an ARM template easier?
Yes and no. So right now, I would say the honest answer there is going to be no.
Okay.
The real answer is there is something. So if you have this this resource management tab, you can see your resource groups in there. If you have an existing deployment, you will be able to, or if you have something that you want to deploy, you can deploy from here and run a template with parameters as well. If you have existing resources or existing resource groups, you will also be able to look at the ARM template for them. But the editing is currently essentially code completion for JSON.
Okay.
So it's not where I would like it.
Okay.
Right. It's a young ID, right? It's only been out for what, 3 years now? 2 years?
Yeah, 3 years. Good 3 years.
And you guys have packed so much goodness in there. So, give it some time, everyone. Try it out, and then if you have feature requests, I suspect that Maarten and the team are open to any feedback, right?
Absolutely, and if you want to build ARM support, I'm more than happy to take pull requests as well.
Nice.
Yeah, there you go.
That's how the modern world works, right?
Exactly.
Well, and
help us.
Well, and on that topic too. So there's this. I know this is a bit of a diversion, but there's the Bicep DSL for ARM now that was just announced. I mean, I think it was just announced last week, and it's looking at it, it has sort of a Terraform vibe to it, right? But it's just essentially an easier way to author an ARM template straight up. And I think if anything, like if I'm going to have to write an ARM template manually, I think doing it with Bicep, I think I'd prefer to do it over doing it with ARM directly, right?
I think we have not invented here kind of a thing where.
No, actually not. I'm going to turn that question around related to ARM in Rider. So Rider does have excellent F# support. So if you use Farmer, which is an F# based DSL to do ARM deployments, you could use that inside Rider and then get full code completion navigation in between the different resources that you have in your templates.
Cool.
Nice. See? Well, I'll drop a link in the chat for people to find it.
Cool, sounds good. All right, let's continue our application. The next thing we want to do is do a post. So what I'm going to do is create a this is going to be an async task. Post, I think.
Oh, look at you, JP, beating me to the punch.
Oh, sorry.
So fast. So fast, so efficient.
All right. Next thing we want to do is, since I mentioned if you log into Rider using Azure CLI, the thing you have is that you're also automatically logged into with your Azure CLI profile in your .NET code as well. So if you want to say that you want to have a new chain token credential, for example, or you pass in a new Azure CLI credential, and I think you can add your managed identity as well if you want.
Mm-hmm.
But if we do that and do var and then make that a credential, then we should be automatically logged into Azure, and we should be able to use our resources that we have in the portal. So next thing I'm going to do is create a new blob service client.
And were you able to access the chain token credential without actually adding the Azure Identity, the Azure Identity NuGet package?
No, it's there.
Sorry, I missed that step, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. There. Okay.
So I will need my storage account URL. I have no idea what it is, so I'm going to open it in the portal. I have to re-log in. And then just copy it from there. I think I could have written this one manually, but
better safe than sorry. Sometimes I like to make sure that it's the right one.
Is there no place where I can just copy the storage URL?
Yeah, if you go back into the overview, top level on your storage. Oh, there you go.
Fine. Okay, good. So I'm going to use that one as the URI in my code there. I'm not going to bother with configuration and stuff like that. Give it the credential. Then I'm again going to say .var, which is also one of those nice Rider things where you can write what you want and then say what you want to do with it. So in this case, I want a new blob service client .var. If I then tap, you get a blob service
client. I love it because I do that all the time. Right, is I need to figure out what actual thing I need to use before I'm ready to assign it. Oh, it's so nice. Sorry, I am just over the moon. I love seeing this because the last time I used Rider was probably at least a year ago, and it was.
No, you're lying. We used it like 2 months ago when we were looking at the Azure.
We were looking at the plugins though. We didn't build anything with it, right?
Oh yeah, we didn't build anything.
We were checking out the plugin. So no, I love that. Like that .var. That's so awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I'm just writing connection to the container. Next thing I'm going to do is do a read stream for my uploads. That has an open read stream or something like that. Yep. I'm going to make use of that, and then I'm going to say await container dot upload blob async from my read stream, and I think I should give it a name as well. Since we are so good with naming today, we can either, what would you prefer? A GUID or just pass through whatever we got from the uploaded file?
Oh, let's do GUID, man. It's totally unreadable and totally unfindable. GUID, I would probably say maybe concat it into the first 10 characters or something. I don't know. Or keep it
Well,
as
full good is fine, and let's make everything text files because text files are awesome.
So okay, so so you created the storage account using the plugin, right? And we got our code here. We got a chain token credential, so we can use a CLI credential. Have you added yourself to the like blob owner or data blob reader roles or any of the required roles for the container or for the storage account?
I have not yet. So if I go to my storage container to the identity access control management, I'm not in there yet.
Okay.
So what I'll have to do is for my current identity, I will have to add that role assignment indeed. So I'll select blob data contributor. Should be good enough.
Okay. Okay, sorry, and I didn't mean to jump ahead. I just thought that I was like, wait a minute, what kind of magic are they about to show us that like?
This is actually this is something that I would like as a feature as well in Rider, and that's probably a good thing to start building next using the Java SDKs. Something where we could just right-click the storage account and say, make me a block data contributor or something.
right. So as long as your account has has the right permissions to change permissions within the storage account, you should be able to assign yourself or other accounts into that account. So that's the limitation there, right? The account that you're connecting with needs to have the right permissions to operate on those storage accounts. But yeah, that would be awesome.
So essentially, this step, I would love to automate that.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we now have our role assignments. Let's restart our application, and if all goes well, I should be able to upload files to my storage account essentially without passing in any explicit credentials or having credentials on my machine apart from those that Azure CLI has.
So this will work on the local machine, right? But once you deploy to a production environment, you don't have the CLI local. How do you plan on addressing that? Are you going to add to the chain token credential?
Yeah, you should still add the managed identity, for example, to the chain token credential, and then you can use it once you publish as well.
Cool.
Not authorized to perform this operation. I probably used a different account.
Probably.
That's my storage contributor. Let's add all of them because I don't know which account I'm currently using. Let's make it a storage account. It should be a data contributor, right?
Yep.
Or owner contributor. Yeah. Let's add all of them.
Don't do this at home, folks.
Yeah, this is not best practice. All right, let's try to upload again.
Because we don't know which account we're signed in with. I know that feeling.
Yeah, you didn't say I would have to do best practices. Right?
No. They could be any practices. It's totally fine.
Any practice. As long as it works.
It didn't work yet. Now it seems to have worked because it uploaded something and I'm back on my page. So let's try another one and upload I don't know, filezilla.exe. Submit. And that worked because nothing happens, but I'm again at no file chosen. So if all went well, my uploads should now contain 2 GUIDs and .txt because that's the thing that we
Nice. That's awesome.
Sweet. Yes.
And I mean,
that works.
it's not a whole lot of code. It's not a whole lot, and there really wasn't a whole lot of configuration, right? I mean, Rider handled creating the app registration for you and creating all of the majority of your Azure resources. I mean, the one thing we had to do is go and set your, give you permissions to write to the account, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's still something that we have to do manually in the portal. So what I would love to have is a menu entry here where we could say create the RBAC role and be done with it.
Yeah, no, that's super cool though. I mean, you think about how much time was saved. That's super cool. Love it.
Yeah, the less context switching you have to do, the better it is. And Sean said, yeah, the less you're forced to use the mouse, for example, the better. And the ID allows you to do quite a few things with the keyboard for the keyboard warriors out there.
Absolutely.
That's
So yeah,
awesome.
next thing I would love to do is start building. That's okay. That's okay with you.
Absolutely, man.
We love it. Yeah. Do we want to?
Again, I don't want to build a UI for it, so it will be very limited and probably even hard-coded rules. But we'll definitely check out what the APIs would look like that we would have to call to be able to get all that data.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Well, why don't we take a quick? We'll just take a quick 5-minute break, coffee,
Sounds
restroom,
good.
whatever, and when we get back, we'll start. We'll add this feature, right?
Sounds good.
Cool. All right, everybody. We'll see you in 5. Okay, we're back. So now we're going to add RBAC. We're gonna add RBAC roles by default, huh?
Yep,
Nice.
yep, that's the idea.
This is
We'll
insane.
see how the sausages are made, so you'll see the internals of the plugin, how everything fits together, and all that.
Super cool.
So this was the last bit of Rider that you've seen for a while. We'll dive into code now. I'll give some pointers so you understand what's happening there, and then we'll see if we can add a menu entry that creates that RBAC role. All right. So I have IntelliJ open here, and I have the Azure Toolkit for IntelliJ in there. If you were to clone the Microsoft version, you would see a different folder layout. The thing that we did in our fork was essentially extract all of the common parts into just a source root there, and then the IntelliJ specific things and the Rider specific things are in their own modules. So treat these as projects in .NET, for example, where those are in a different place.
Right.
I'm not going to go into the idea part. I will go in the Rider part. Now, before we start coding, let's maybe look at one of the things so you get an idea of how that register application in Azure AD thing works. So what we can do is go to our register application in Azure AD action. Everything in the IDE is an action. So everything you do is something that is an action, that has a name, a description, and optionally an icon as well. There's an update method that is being called, which is essentially where you decide whether the action should be enabled, disabled, or visible or invisible, things like that. So what we do there is essentially check, do you have a project open, yes or no? And do you have an app settings JSON file that we can read and parse before we expose this feature in your Rider instance?
Nice.
If that's the case, it will be visible. If the user clicks something, then the action will be performed, and we get back in lots of metadata. We check if we should be signing in. And actually, I'm gonna probably copy paste this later on because we'll need the same thing in our next action. But essentially, what we're doing there is figuring out which file to use and so on. We also have a case there where we check if you have multiple subscriptions with different tenants that you're using in Rider. We'll also prompt which one you want to use for this application. So all of that is there. And at some point, I think I wrote up the line number just to go through this, 195. There we go. At some point, we start using the RBAC management clients in Java. By the way, this is Kotlin, all of the code that you see. That's the JetBrains JVM language. So it runs on JVM, fully compatible with Java, but it's very, you'll see it almost looks like C#. There's a link from F# as well, so I think this is going to be very easy to read.
So just for our audience and for our understanding, Kotlin is a superset of Java in the same way that TypeScript is for JavaScript. Is that correct? Would you put it that way?
I would look at it more like Kotlin is another language on the CLR. So just like you have C# and VB.NET, which are completely compatible, use the same runtime. Same thing is with Kotlin and Java. In fact, the reason why we wrote Kotlin at JetBrains is because we wanted something that was more modern than with Java from 10 years ago. But since a lot of IntelliJ was written in Java, we wanted that full operability, so we didn't have to do a big rewrite to be able to start using it.
So you have all the Java APIs, but you also have some Kotlin specific APIs that are not in Java. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Gotcha. Thank you.
You'll actually you'll also see in the plugin that, for example, in the Microsoft plugin, there's an add library util that they use to add some library to your project as a reference. This thing is written in Java. This is pure Java, so they sit side by side. It all compiles and it all works.
Very nice. I need to give Kotlin a go actually.
So we have this. Our action is being executed, and we want to start figuring out how we are going to add those AD settings that we saw in the earlier demo. So the idea there is, first of all, that we get token credentials from our current Azure manager. Now that is the most interesting one that we have in the entire project, and that actually comes from the Microsoft plugin. The Azure manager is an interface that exposes settings, logging in, getting the current user ID, getting access tokens, and all of that. So the moment you sign into Rider, an instance of the Azure Manager is registered in your current workspace, so to speak, and that is exposing everything that you need to know. The nice thing is that I mentioned that you can use China Cloud or German Cloud as well in Azure. Once you sign in Rider using any one of those clouds, you can still use whatever API we have in here. That Azure Manager is going to expose the correct environment with the correct access tokens and all of that.
Sweet.
So you can see if you want to start using the RBAC management clients that comes from the AD libraries for Java. We can pass it the Azure Manager.environment.azure-environment.graph endpoint, and no matter which region you are using or no matter which Azure cloud you are using, this one will be the correct URL to use. By the way, this graph RBAC management client implementation, those are all libraries that come from the libraries for Java on GitHub. That's stuff you guys do. There's pretty much for every Azure service, there's management APIs that you can get there. You install them using Maven or Gradle, which is the NuGet or the NPM that you have in Java and Kotlin, and you can start using them.
So we've got a quick question. So is there a concept of switching between subscriptions? Like if you've got access to multiple ones, can I switch between them in Rider itself for which one I want to target?
So in Rider, once you sign in or you select your subscriptions, you can use multiple ones. Okay. And essentially everything you do will ask for the subscription where you want it to happen. So nice. If you create a storage account, it will ask you which subscription you want to use and so on. So if you now create one, you'll see that we get asked for a subscription that we want to use.
So what about if I have multiple like tenants, right? So like my account, I'm in the corp tenant, I'm in customer tenants, and all sorts of other places. Can we add multiple accounts, kind of like how Storage Explorer does it?
Yes. So you can, if you have storage accounts, for example, you can attach an external storage account and just pass in account name and account key that you want to have. If you're currently not using the Azure CLI login, this will work transparently. So if your identity is in multiple tenants, then that all will work. And next to the subscription, you will also be able to switch between tenants.
Ah, cool. Okay.
If you're using the CLI, actually logged an issue there in the upstream repo, so in the Azure tools for Java that you are building. There's an issue there, and I've seen lots of commits around that. So there's being worked on in our base branch, I think. And once Microsoft figures it out, we'll have it as well.
Nice.
So that's kind of the way things work together. This is really foundational, something they want to have as well, so it makes sense for them to fix it. Right, so that's RBAC management client. I don't know if you know, for .NET, for Java, for every single language where you have those management SDKs, those are all generated, I think. Mm-hmm. And a lot of documentation that you will find that is for .NET will also kind of work for Java and Kotlin, because the API flow is essentially almost the same. Right, so what we do here when we register the application is we get a graph client. We build our model, so we show the UI. Once the UI gets back, we essentially start building application update parameters, if you have an existing one. If you updated the name, we say, okay, add display name, add the reply URL, remove the reply URL, things like that. And then we call that graph clients, applications, fetch, and just give it the object with the parameters. So essentially, this is more building the UI, making sure that the UX flow works, than it is making sure that we can do something with the graph client, because the graph client has access to applications. It can do essentially whatever we want it to do. If you open up completion for the graph client, I should type better. This is going to go well for live coding.
Hey.
you will see that, yeah, all of those things are there. So I can get and set the API versions. There's my domains on there, my service principals, my tenant ID, my users. So everything that is exposed on the RBAC clients in .NET, for example, similar thing here. This is the one that was generated for Java, so we can use that and get all these properties.
That's fantastic.
No, and that's another interesting thing too, which is currently in our Rider app, we're using a chain token credential, which is using the CLI. But when we're not using CLI, our Azure AD application is going to need the storage scope, right, in order to be able to connect to storage. I think.
Managed identity should work as long as you have the managed identity configured correctly, right? So the question is, what happens in live when you go live?
Well, the managed identity would be, so that we'd add the managed identity to an RBAC role, right? But
correct.
What I'm wondering is how we treat it. So like when I get an access token, it has a specific scope in it, right?
Yep.
And the storage scopes they all start at stores.azure.com. And when you're using CLI, like CLI has all sorts of special permissions to do things. But when you're building your own app, I'm wondering, because unless you're doing like Azure user impersonation, I'm wondering how we can get, especially if you're doing it as the user, not as the application itself, like you would be with an managed service identity. If you're doing it as the user, would we need that scope in order for the app to work? I'm not sure yet, and whether or not we should add it while we're here. But we can come back around to it if it doesn't work.
Yeah, I think if you deploy, you still have to configure it. The web app or wherever you deploy it in Azure. And in the other case, I think you have to pass in the application ID, get a secret, and do all of that stuff. Right. So back to the graph clients. Essentially, when you create an application, similar thing. You go to the graph clients.applications. You start creating one, and you essentially pass it whatever parameters you want the application to look like. So what we did in the UI in Rider when we registered the application was essentially make this call where we create a new application in Azure AD. Now, with that out of the way, I'll keep this one open because there's some things that I will probably be copying from here to make the live coding a little bit smoother. But I suggest we start building that menu entry on our storage nodes so that we can add an RBAC.
Cool.
Yeah, right. Let's do this.
So I know that we have a Rider node action maps. So this is essentially in the Rider plugin where we build up the menus that should be available for whatever you see in the context menu there. You won't see everything here. So for example, web apps, not everything web apps have is listed here. I mentioned that this is split between a common part, the Rider part, and the IntelliJ part. So this Rider node actions map only contains those things that are specific to Rider.
Ah, clever.
Right. So what I want to do is essentially do something similar like we have here. So what I'm going to do is in that node actions map, I'm going to say that I want to work with a storage node. That's the node that is my storage account.
Right.
If all goes well, I should get code completion at some point. Actually, let me close this one because that's a massive solution. And looks like my PC is struggling a little bit with the stream. So yeah, all right, import this one. I'll go with storage accounts and get that thing in. Of course, the next thing I have to do is build the action. This is not going to be a create a new function action that we want to make. So let's create an RBAC role action or something like that. And that's the one we want to create.
Right.
So this is essentially hooking up the action that I'll create to that specific storage node. Now, typically, if you would build a plugin for Rider and IntelliJ, this is all kind of discovered as well based on your plugin description. However, that's another interesting thing about the Azure plugin for Rider and IntelliJ. Everything that you have in the UI, at least for IntelliJ, also exists in Eclipse, which is another Java And the Azure Toolkit that Microsoft is shipping, actually, by doing this, they proxy it into IntelliJ as well as into Eclipse so that this menu entry can improve.
Oh, very nice. So both IntelliJ and Eclipse will get the goodness every time somebody contributes into the toolkit, right?
Yeah.
Very nice.
Right, so what I'll do is create a new class in Kotlin. I know it's in the same file. I hope you, again, we're not doing best practices here, so let's create it in the same file. Typically, you would create a separate file to put your class as well.
Hey, it's not about best practice, it's about getting it to work.
Yeah, exactly. So our action, what it's going to need is a storage node.
Right.
And that's going to be my storage node. And this is kind of like those record types that will come to C#9, where in Kotlin, what you have is you have a class, and whatever you pass in your constructor and has val as a prefix will be a public property on this class.
Nice.
What I can also do is make this a private val storage node, and then this will be called as a constructor, and I will get a storage node from this mechanism. But also, I can use this as an internal private property in the class later.
Super cool.
All right, this is going to be a node action listener. Just copy the class name from there as well. I will have to call that constructor there, I think, and then go with that. I'll also annotate this one, just like in C# where you have attributes. Here you have annotations where you can say this is going to be the RBAC role. This is going to be the caption in the menu.
Yes.
I can control that inside of the action, but this is kind of nice because then it would be easier later on to hook up internationalization.
Right.
Yeah.
Translate those things.
So name can also take a value from a resource file and then it can be
yeah, exactly.
localized. Nice.
All right. Now we see this is not implemented because it's an abstract class and we have to implement something. So we have to implement the action performed. Just like with any action in Rider and IntelliJ, you can also create the update method where you decide whether something should be available or not. But let's skip that for now and just take in the node action events. Essentially, whenever you have a storage account, we're going to light up this menu entry and have it.
Cool.
I mentioned I was going to copy paste a lot of code, so I'm going back to.
Isn't that not a staple of every developer out there? No shame.
Copy paste driven development. So the thing we want to do here is not from our current event, but from our storage nodes. We want to get our current project. So we know that we are in a current project. Now, I know project is kind of confusing because in Rider, a project is actually a solution, but this is the fact that we are in a Rider solution.
Okay.
Control-C, Control-V driven development.
Yeah, exactly. We are getting that project and we still have to cast it as a project. Everything in Rider or in Kotlin is also explicit in terms of nullability. So we have to specify what we are converting everything into.
Right.
So in this case, I'm going to convert it into a project that is nullable. If it is null, I have this question mark colon where I say return.
Right.
This is essentially an if project is null, then return. If not, return the project.
Right.
By using this construct, that's kind of nice. Now my project, even though I casted it to a nullable project, here it is not nullable.
Nice.
Because it knows that if it's null, it's going to return and not return my project there.
I like it.
That's one of those nice things that I really enjoy in Kotlin. By the way, val, if you prefer C# way, you can name var as well. The only difference in Kotlin is that var means that the project is now mutable. Val means it's immutable, so I can never reassign a project.
Oh, F sharp goodness there, right?
Yeah.
Nice.
So in C#, I think you could also do something like a const string or a read-only string somewhere.
Yeah.
Similar, but this is nice and shorthand in Kotlin codes. The other thing that I copied is essentially checking if you are currently signed into Azure inside Rider. that's something that we want to do here, right?
Yep.
Another thing that I want to fetch is from is the application that we're running in. So what I'm going to do is make use of the application manager.get instance, I think. This is essentially some IntelliJ infrastructure where I get access to my current ID.
Right.
I need that because at a later point, I want to fan out some work into a separate thread that is not blocking the UI. So I will use this application class to do something else.
Right.
I'm also going to copy something else, which is going to be this one. So I'm also going to copy the fact that I have this Azure Manager so that I can start working with Azure immediately, get access to the correct APIs with credentials and everything that I needed in my plugin.
Sweet.
I'm going to use a similar construct here where I say return if I get a null value. Because if I get null values, none of this is going to matter. So just return whenever we see something that fails. Ideally, this is going to be a log statement in best practices world, something that we would not expect and want to investigate later. But for the sake of demo, let's just return and be done with it. Right. The next thing we are going to do is make use of that application. So I mentioned that we have a UI thread where this action will be called in the IDE. And if you do a lot of work, if you do a lot of I/O that has to wait for things, the UI is going to block. So what we are going to do is do an invoke later.
Oh, is that like almost like an async in the .NET world? Yeah.
So Kotlin as a language has coroutines, which is really async await like that you would have in .NET. The fact that we are cooperating with Java in IntelliJ means that we have to work around that. So this is kind of a shorthand to do a couple of things.
Sure.
Essentially fan it out to a different thread.
Okay.
Maybe something about syntax here as well. So this invoke later method is, if you would write this in C#, would be something that is a task invoke later. That then takes a function that returns a task that we can do and then calls something internally.
Right.
Yeah, so it's like an old school delegate, right?
Yeah, exactly. Now, Kotlin has some syntactic sugar where if the only argument to your function or the last argument to your method is a lambda, you can invoke it by adding just the braces instead of adding all of the brackets around.
Nice.
Ah, yeah.
So I could do something like this where I write the entire thing, but that's lots of syntax essentially cluttering what I have. So this is nice shorthands for.
It's very nice and clean. I like it. I like Kotlin so far.
Yeah, I got a buddy who's been a long-time Java developer, and I was just talking to him. It's like, hey, you should come and watch what's going on. He said that he and his team, they're working really hard to get everybody to move to Kotlin exclusively, and they use it for all of their Android development now. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It's a really cool language, and as I mentioned, there's lots of influence from C#, from F#, from Python. You'll see very different languages popping up depending on what you're doing in the language. But I think it's been cherry picking the good parts of a lot of languages.
That's the beauty of coming late into the game, right? You take all the best practices from other languages and put them into one.
Exactly. I'm going to copy one more thing, and that is going to be the code that gives me back all of the subscriptions that I'm signed into in Rider. So what I'm going to do is do this thing, get subscriptions. Let's rename that. From our Azure Manager, we get the subscription details as a sequence, which means that we can also filter it and then to lists. This is essentially the same dialog that I showed in Rider, where you could pick all of the subscriptions that you are signed into. We're essentially making sure that only the selected ones are available for us to use here.
Very nice. That's your link in Kotlin. We're learning Kotlin as we go. I love this one.
Also, of course, depending on what you're doing, but a lot of these filter methods and so on are at compile time converted into actual for eaches and things like that. So there's no lambdas passing around and then pointer magic happening. So it's really dumbed down at the runtime level.
Sweet.
All right, I'm gonna do something stupid, and from my subscriptions, I'm gonna say from my subscriptions, this one, and I have no idea. It's really the streaming, I think, for code completion to happy. So I'm sort of trying to make this work, but it seems to work. I now have a subscription. The first one that was selected, again, ideally, I would pop up something if there were multiple selected where the user could do something. But again, UI doesn't matter at this stage, so let's just pick the first one. All right, next thing I'll need are those token credentials as well. So I have that file, token credentials, because for my Azure Manager, I want to be able to authenticate to the services that I can use and to the API that I can use. A little bit for it to catch up. By the way, if my boss is watching, I need new hardware.
Is it Hadi? Is it still Hadi? All right, Hadi, we need some new hardware, my friend.
Right.
I'll pass on the request.
This will probably pop up because I copied it from elsewhere, so the syntax is correct. We'll see it when it happens, and let's go with the next thing. The next thing I'll need is that RBAC manager to be able to communicate again with RBAC. So what I'm going to do is, well, RBAC manager equals, I think it is a manager. Actually, let's confirm that. If we go to GitHub to the Azure libraries for Java, find graph RBAC. Look into the sources of that thing. There should be an implementation as well. And there is going to be a graph RBAC manager. So that's the one that we are going to use. All right. Let's go with the graph RBAC manager, and we'll have to create a new one, which means we call the constructor. But I think this one is a static one. And what I'm actually going to do is restart IntelliJ just to make sure that I get some code completion as well.
Go for it.
Wow, really hangy here. I'm just for the sake of having more system resources, I'm going to close a couple of things.
Don't close Teams.
A couple of things. Let's go with that. Save, yada yada yada. And go with IntelliJ again. Live coding. Developer Live is restarting IDEs every once in a while. While IntelliJ is starting, shouldn't take long. I am going to do one thing, and that is from my current storage accounts. I'm going to remove those storage blob data contributor roles that I added, so that we can check the plugin actually works, right?
Yes.
I'll remove those. Trust the portal does that well. My IntelliJ is gone, really. This is not the best demo. Anyway.
Hey, it's going great. Don't worry about it.
Oh, there it is. There it is. Yes. All right.
And you're not due for a Windows update, right? Because sometimes Windows does some stupid things behind the scenes, like downloading massive updates to your operating system. So it could be that.
That was actually an interesting one when I've been at Microsoft as well as an employee, and I was working from Belgium here, so that's an 8 or 9 hour time difference depending on what time of day you're at. And usually the time we would have stand-up with our team was also the time that Windows started updating things from the internal Windows Update server. So at least 2 or 3 stand-ups a week would be totally worthless because Windows would have to restart. Software is going to rule the world.
That's what they keep telling us. One day.
I remember back in 2000s when they were like, AI is going to take over the world in 5 years.
Well,
yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I don't know. I remember a buddy of mine does a bunch of like data science work. He's like 90% of my job is data cleansing and figure out ways to clean data to get it ready to go and train it. Go train a model.
I think that's a lot. That's probably most working in AI right now. Just cleaning the model and making sure that you don't feed it any biased data or something that messes up your end results.
Yeah, I think AI is probably more of a human question than a technical problem to solve, right? Like of eliminating bias and like I mean, we see what happens with like facial recognition software. It doesn't reliably recognize anybody except for white people, for example, and it's it's a human problem to solve of creating that sort of having enough diversity in all the different people who are working on these models to make sure that everyone is accounted for, not just the people who are writing it.
Yeah, but I also think because that subject came up a lot in terms of AI and machine learning, but I also think that's been in software industry for a long time because we're humans and we take our biases and we use that in codes. So
yeah,
it's not a new problem, but it's good that right now people are more attentive to it.
Yes, agreed.
All right, looks like I'm going to be coding blind here. This is nuts. Oh yes, something is happening. Something is happening. Good.
Just how you said that, I think IntelliJ took offense. Like, no, I'm not gonna let you do it blindly.
Analyzing, come on, you can do this. Actually, I'm just gonna say only syntax highlighting or only syntax analysis. I know what is happening. So the Rider plugin has a dependency on Rider as a package because we need the entire plugin infrastructure and so on.
Okay.
And I'm using the snapshot version of that, which means it's essentially whatever the build server pushes out as the latest version.
Yeah.
So I guess in the background that has been updating, and it's now essentially rescanning all the code that is inside Rider.
Oh,
nice.
Right.
Oh well, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I did write up a couple of snippets, so I'm gonna do some blind coding here. If you have the Graph RBAC Manager, any of the Azure libraries, you have to configure them first. What the configure call is going to do is set up the object for use, make sure that the correct URLs are in there to make a call to, so that you can actually start using it. And then you can authenticate using those token credentials.
Right.
You know what? I'm going to close that one. And reopen it and see if that fixes the thing. Almost. Maybe this will help. Extract it to a separate class or to a separate file. So we're going to do best practices after all.
The best convenient practices. Those are the best ones. The ones that are convenient.
Exactly. Come on, moving declarations. Yes, there we go. Fine, add it to Git.
We're going to start a GoFundMe to get Maarten a new machine.
Yeah. Are you working on a laptop or a desktop these days?
It's a laptop.
Yeah.
We'll do some more blind typing then. So we have this thing, we have the RBAC Manager, and that's the one that we want to use to make use of whatever is out there on Azure. So this thing has a number of methods that we can conveniently not see in code completion here, but good thing for us, we still have GitHub, where was it, this one, where you have the RBAC Manager and we can look at the methods that are there. So that authenticate method is there, configure is there, and I think there should be something in there that also exposes the role definitions.
There you are.
Role definitions. Because we want to check which role definitions are available for us to add to our storage account. So let's first get that one. Role definition equals RBAC manager dot. Use that one that I pasted.
Mm-hmm. So that pulls all the RBAC roles without any filters,
Yep.
right?
This is returning a role definitions collection kind of thing. So I think that is going to have a method that is going to be something like lists.
Mm-hmm.
Is code completion now paused?
Yeah, so because you can define your own roles in Azure too. Like everything is, if you look at one of the Azure securables, it's essentially a path, right? I mean, it's not necessarily a hard path like to an actual resolvable path, but it's a URI type structure that looks like your subscription / a subscription ID, WAC, resource group, WAC storage. You can build whatever type of roles you need. So while we have a bunch that are built into Azure, you could also compose your own role definitions if you have really specific set of requirements that a specific team needs this, and this. You can create those roles with just those scopes, and then assign people to them and assign them to specific resources, which is super cool. So
yeah.
So this is going to list all of the scopes lists the role definitions for a specific scope. So I found it on GitHub what the method should be, and I think I can pass in my my current nodes, my storage nodes that we had in the menu. That one should have an object that is the same for most nodes where you expose what it is exposing. So the storage node will have a storage account linked to it, and then we should be able to get the ID as well. It is funny that I get code completion on that though. I know highlighting. One of those Thursdays, I guess. Anyway, this should get us our role definitions because we list all of them for our storage accounts. Probably we will want to do a first or null on that. Just in this case, because we are hard coding and do something where we say it's dot. I guess they have a role name property, if I was not mistaken from looking at GitHub before. I'm gonna check if my current role name contains something that is data contributor, something like that. The reason I'm doing this is ideally this should pop up some UI, I think, and show all the available scopes. But for now, I'm just going to go with whatever we know is the good one and take that as the definition.
Right. Yeah, I think the formal name is storage blob data contributor or owner or reader, whatever. So that should be fine. That should definitely work.
That should be good. By the way, I'm going to make that case insensitive because I think there's capitalized letters in the actual role as well.
Yep.
Good, so we have the role definition. The other thing that we will need is our current user. There is a method on our Azure manager that is a current Azure, I think.
Oh, that's very convenient.
This is actually an extension method that we wrote on it.
Ah, right.
In Kotlin, you can also have extension methods where you extend the Azure Manager with that method. And using the token credentials, we make a call to the graph endpoint and get back object ID, object type, and whether the account is enabled or not.
Sweet.
Also, this is maybe an interesting, it's a bit of a side tangent, but we are using refits in there. Retrofits. I don't know in .NET if you know about refits, the library.
No.
The idea is there that for every single API call or REST API call that you want to make, you create an interface, in this case, service, specify what the get or post or put or whatever request should look like, if there should be headers or not, and I'm going to return this class, object ID, object type, and so on.
Wow, super cool. Yeah, I like that.
Using that retrofit client, we can just call me.execute and then get back the entire result from the API.
Yeah, I've seen refit. I've never used it.
Retrofit in Java and Kotlin world, refit is heavily
And
inspired on this, and they do a similar thing in .NET. And actually,
nice.
all of the Java APIs that Microsoft is shipping are using retrofits under the hood as well. So if you would spelunk through the entire library, you would see a lot of those interfaces that are annotated with gets, puts, posts, and so on.
Ah, learned something new today, or many new things today.
I'm going to get my current user, and then the next thing is going to be creating the role assignment, I think, where I link that role definition for my current user to my current storage accounts.
Nice.
Now the big question is, I cannot do this without code completion, so that is kind of annoying. But maybe you should do the unwrapping or unboxing first, and then we return once IntelliJ catches up.
That's a good idea. JP, are you ready to
move on to the... All right. You want to open this thing up? All right.
Yeah, we're going into Surface Duo.
I don't have a good way to move my camera, so I guess I'll just hold it, right?
Yeah. Usually they have a camera that points down to the desk.
Well,
fit into the...
I'm also not a pro at doing any of this, right? So
okay.
All right. So
slower.
Oh, slower. Sorry. Wow, it's I'm gonna drop it. I can feel it now. It's like all glass, super slippery.
Okay.
All right. So I gotta get this plastic off of here. I don't know how it's on here. Oh, nice. Okay.
First impressions? Is it big, small? Did you expect it to be?
Well, it fits in a shirt pocket, right? I mean, it fills the shirt pocket, but it fits in it, so that's cool. It's pretty thin, like especially like it's pretty thin when it's closed. It's super thin, like when it's open. I don't know how I'm gonna. I mean, I guess it actually fits in the hand pretty well, right? I'm like super worried I'm gonna break this thing.
Now, can you get a case for these things? That'll be.
I saw there were. I'm gonna try to turn it on. I saw there were some cases for it, right? So
get it closer to the camera, man. You're doing the first switch on.
I don't.
Hold it up.
Is the battery dead? Oh no, the battery's not dead. Okay, so that's good, right? So it's starting. It came with there's like a little bumper in here, right?
AZ Wildfire is asking, is it 5G?
No,
Wi-Fi 6. What the hell is Wi-Fi 6? Is that new?
Oh. Yeah, Wi-Fi. No, I don't have a Wi-Fi 6 access point yet. I'm gonna get one. I don't know if it's Wi-Fi 6. My assumption would be no. Okay, so get started. All right.
So sorry, AZ Wildfire. I'm a noob. Wi-Fi 6. I didn't know it existed. I just go Wi-Fi. No versioning.
It is kind of neat though, like how it sits in your hand. My real curiosity is going to be like in day-to-day usage, right? Of like you pick it up and you go do something. So I put it in my Wi-Fi here.
I did the domain.
I mean, the screens look excellent. There's like the screen is like super vibrant.
DT in the cloud says he's drooling right now.
I mean, and it has a 300 meg update, so that ought to be fun.
Oh wow! So, set up your workplace. Join it to the domain and download everything. Intune it.
Yeah. See, the problem now is so we just switched to work profiles at work, which is going to be awful. So when you hit the next button on the system update, it opens the actual system update app on the other screen. So it's 200. Oh, so over here it's 259 megs, but the actual download is 272 megs. So what could possibly go wrong? So then, all right. So hang on. So there's this other. So there's a bumper. It says attach the bumper. All right. So let's see.
Oh. What is a bumper?
Well, I guess it's a bumper for the edge of it. So to see how to attach this, check out a video. So once you go look at a video on how to, I mean, I think it's just like a sticky thing, right? And you take this, and it sticks here, right? I guess. Like there's like a thing you peel off the back. So I guess you stick it on this side.
Somebody's saying don't put the bumper on until you get the SIM card in. I heard it's a single use case. Ooh.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, a single use? Oh yeah, something tells me once you take this sticky stuff off, it doesn't go back on. Yeah. So, well, I'm pretty sure it has eSIM, right? So I should be able to use an eSIM on here, right? So I don't need to put a SIM in the tray?
I wouldn't know.
I think it does.
Okay. Can you find the tray somewhere?
Well, the tray's right here, right, on the side. But if I can use eSIM, then I don't have to worry about the tray at all. Because you don't put a SIM in it, right?
Give it a go first and see if the eSIM works. If it doesn't work, then you have to add
I wonder. Oh no, there's a door for the SIM tray. I was gonna say I can't imagine you can put a case on it and you can't take it off ever again, and you can't change the SIM card.
Apparently, you can buy replacements based on the DT in the cloud.
I'm sure you can buy. I'm sure you can buy all sorts of things for a modest fee. So, it's. I don't know. I guess I didn't really know what I was expecting, right?
Okay. So tell me, why would you need a bumper though? I mean, it makes it ugly, right?
I don't think it makes it. Do you think it makes it ugly?
Yeah, it makes it bigger. Like I hate having cases on my phone, but at the same time, I'm so clumsy that I drop them all the time. So I have to have a case. Otherwise, phones are there to enjoy them.
Well, but yeah, until they're like, I have a rubber bumper thing on this, and it's fine because it's not super thick, right? Okay. I don't know. I mean.
And you're going to be donating that phone to me now that you have the new one, right?
I'm trading that one in.
Oh, you've already traded that in? Yes.
Yeah. I was tempted to put it in a box so I wouldn't break it before the trade-in thing. So now it's now it's optimizing apps. Like the hinge feels really good though. So like when you close it, I was worried it would feel like glass on glass, but it actually has like a soft close. I don't know if there's
the pod says make it bigger. Put the bumper on. You have 1 foot by 1 foot square in your hand already. So you have 1 square foot on your hand.
See, that's what I'm talking about, right? I mean, yeah, you've already got an enormous thing that barely fits in one hand. What does an extra 4 centimeters or whatever, 2 centimeters of sticky stuff matter? Shit, I took off the wrong side though.
Ah, nice. Sounds like you and Nodes. Like I've already downloaded half the internet. I might as well just add one more package, right? What's the harm in it? You already have a massive phone. Why not add 2 more millimeters on the side? Yeah, you're right.
This is true. Okay, so you push this on.
Oh, it says if it's AT&T, they do not support eSIM. That's from Corey Call. So
no, Google Fi. Google Fi, Callaway. Come on now. Know me better than that. AT&T. The only thing worse than AT&T would be Verizon, right?
Or T-Mobile.
Well, I have T-Mobile, but T-Mobile works fine for me, though. I know people complain about it. I think it works pretty well. Okay, so that's one side of it. Okay. It doesn't.
He says he knows. Just putting it out there for your fans. Thank you.
Fans. Yeah. People who wish I would stop talking. It's an interesting way to describe fans, but okay. So I think the bumper's on correctly. I mean, it's kind of hard to tell, to be perfectly honest, but okay. So then the other side.
So what are you installing first, besides the work profile?
I mean, I'll have to do work stuff because 90% of the time when we're working, I'm on my phone anyway.
True. I checked most of my email on that. Oh, yeah. Somebody says we should do a live drop test. Yes.
I tell you what, we'll do a live drop test right when we'll do a live drop test as soon as somebody sends me a second one of theirs to drop. Okay, so
in fact, just bring the blender out and let's see if it blends. We're doing a new segment on our show called "Will It Blend?" And we're taking every new item that JP buys and we blend it.
That would be such a shame.
But there's a show on YouTube, right, that people go and blend really expensive hardware. Like, why would you do that? Just donate it to me, man.
I don't think it's
millions of views. That's insane.
I don't think is that still around. They were doing that though to sell blenders, right? So I'm kind of curious how this finger thing's gonna work? Like, what do you swipe it? Like, I don't know. It's just one of those ones like you found on like a Lenovo laptop from the last 2 decades. Like this, I guess you swipe your finger on it. I don't know.
Yeah, you should blend your new beams. You know, the light beams that you got. Let's see if that blends.
So I don't know. I don't think it's that bad with the bumper. I mean, you think that looks ugly? I don't think it looks ugly.
Oh, it's bearable.
I mean, bear in mind too, we're talking about me, right? Who's gonna think like? Who's gonna say, "Oh man, I was totally gonna go talk to that guy," but that ugly ass phone case he's got, I just can't. Like, nobody's gonna do that when I'm at the grocery store with my 3 kids.
I'm already thinking whether we should keep you on the show now as a co-host. Like, put the bumper on, right?
I know.
Oh,
well, I mean,
JP, Coracle just subscribed to our channel. Thank you, Coracle. You rock, man.
Here's the only problem with the subscription things is I think subscriptions infer some type of money or financial thing, and we got to figure out how to send it to charity or whatever. So
yeah, we'll be donating everything to charity. So if you subscribe, thank you for subscribing, by the way. We'll give you a massive shout out, but we're doing it all for charity.
Yeah, we're not going to keep any of it, obviously. So
JP Surface Charity.
oh wait, it's restarting. Okay, so it's. I mean, you're right. I need to go put complete on this. Lord only knows how much that's going to cost. But at least the trade-in on the Note is pretty high. So
Twitch takes 50% of subs, by the way. Wow.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that much. It seems like a lot.
Damn, Amazon, you're more aggressive than Apple here.
Oh, this is kind of neat. So this is starting up, right? Kind of hard to see because my lights are all bright, but.
It's okay. Yeah. We can see it.
Okay, and now I guess I have to do setup again. Set up a mobile network. Insert a SIM card if you have one. What? So maybe there is no eSIM?
Oh, snap.
That's kind of lame.
Case.
No.
I mean, miss my Windows phone. Dude, talking about Windows phones, just keeping it real here.
I know. I've got like 8 Windows phones in a box in the closet. All right, let me get this thing out of here. Hang on.
You see that? That still rocks on my hands. It actually doesn't do anything. I use it for a camera, but
surely, I mean, I imagine.
Yep.
Surely there must be a SIM tool somewhere. Of course, I'm sure I probably got one floating around this room somewhere, but let's see. SIM tool? Is this no SIM? No SIM tool there. I wonder where it is.
Hey, Maarten, how's it looking over there, buddy? Are you still struggling with IntelliSense?
Yeah, still indexing. But if this doesn't work out, I also found a sample on GitHub that shows us the next step. So we could go there and then wrap it up, I guess.
Yeah, let's go there and wrap it up.
All right. So under the Azure libraries for Java on GitHub, there is a folder called Azure Samples. And for every single client that exists, there's one or multiple samples about what you can do with them. So this one uses RBAC to create users, assign roles, and things like that. And I think I found a role assignment one. Yep, there we go. So in our code, we had that graph RBAC manager that we had. I think that's authenticated in this case as the variable. We say role assignment that define whatever you want to name it. So it could be a GUID.
Right.
Then for either a service principal or an object ID, then give it the role that you want to assign it. In this case, they're using a built-in role. So apparently contributor is a built-in role. In our code, we first fetched all of the role definitions and we could pass in the name of the one we got from the API.
Right.
And then with scope, I guess, is the next thing we do, which is going to be our storage account, entire resource URL, and then .create, and that should be it. So essentially, all that is missing in our code is something that is similar to the stuff that I just copied from GitHub, which is going to make use of our, probably not going to be built-in role, but with role. We're going to pass in our role definition there for our current user. That's not going to be the service principal, but let's imagine it's called for user. And then with scope is going to be our storage account .id, because that's also the one we use to fetch scopes.
Right.
So we're going to use our storage account and pass that in. So this is very pseudocode, but this should be essentially the entire feature.
Right. That was extremely simple, or you made it look extremely simple, although I believe there's a lot of knowledge that goes behind that. So if people want to contribute, it's great to see that it doesn't take too many steps, but I suspect that you need to have a little bit of knowledge on the toolkit to understand how it works, but it's great, right? Not many lines of code to actually implement that feature, which is fantastic.
So, well, again, we don't have a UI and we don't have error handling and stuff like that, but still it's indeed, the gist of it is easy enough.
Who needs error handling? We're so confident in our code, we don't need to try catch or... do you have try catches in Java?
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. And
all right, so in summary, this would be a nice menu that adds the RBAC role and then removes that additional manual step that we had before.
Oh, wait a minute. Why do you have a semicolon at the end of create, whereas you have no semicolon anywhere else?
The code from GitHub was Java.
Ah.
Now it is Kotlin.
With that simple
our RBAC manager in this case. So this should be almost good. So this is going to be uid.create, I guess, to string, something like that.
Okay.
Give it a name and then, So this is more complete pseudocode than we had before.
Oh, okay. Brilliant. I love it. And I put all the links for you, Maarten. I put all the links to your profile, JetBrains Rider, if people want to go and download it today, and follow on Twitter as well. We have the Azure Toolkit for Rider, so the plugin, Kotlin links if you want to find out about Kotlin and get started with, and finally the Azure libraries for Java, which can all be found on GitHub. Anything else that I missed from these? I think that's super complete, but
I think that's probably it. If anyone wants to have the full working code, because this thing has to work, so I'm gonna complete it anyway. So if anyone wants that, reach out and I'll share it.
Oh, sweet! Check that out. Testing early bits of new tooling. Hey, Maarten, we really appreciate you joining us this morning and for coding 2 hours straight. Much appreciated.
Yeah, that's true.
And happy to do so.
Yeah. And despite all the technical issues that we had to begin with, it was flawless throughout. So we really appreciate that. Thanks for coming. Thanks for all the work that you do with Azure and Azure AD. We love what's coming, and we have a lot more exciting stuff coming your way as well. So everybody stay tuned. And thanks everyone that joined us today on the stream. We'll make it available offline via YouTube, and we'll put a blog post and summary to all the links and the video. So let us know if you have any questions. But for now, thank you for joining us. JP over there is super enamored with his Surface. He's not even paying any attention, which is great.
Well, I'm trying to figure out what to do. You know how it is. You got to set up a new phone. It takes an age. You got to sign into 48,000 different accounts, and
Yeah. New phone. I know, exciting times. So thanks everyone, and we will see you on Tuesday. We have exciting stuff coming. We have somebody from the community, an MVP, coming to talk to us about Terraform with Azure and Azure AD. So see you on Tuesday, everyone. Have a nice rest of the week. Thank you.
Oh, we gotta go. Yeah. We gotta go raid somebody. So
yes, let's raid. Don't go. We're gonna raid somebody.
Let's go to Layla,
which is online. Or Layla.
Yeah, Layla's online. Let's go to Layla.
Oh yeah, let's do Layla. Awesome.
Yeah.
.NET and more goodness. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. We're going to head over to see Layla. We did some B2C work with her a while back, and her channel is super awesome. So we're going to head over, and we will see everybody Tuesday.
Exactly.
All right.